Hi, my name is Folawe Omikunle. I am an under 40 CEO.
The African Renaissance. The concept that the African people and nation shall overcome the current challenges confronting the continent and achieve cultural, scientific, and economic renewal is here, with young men and women taking the lead. Some call them the new school heroes. We call them under 40 CEOs.
Folawe Omikunle graduated from Babcock University in 2008 with a bachelor's degree in international law and diplomacy. Upon completion of a master's degree at the Diplomatic Academy of London, University of Westminster in 2010, she returned to Nigeria and took up an appointment as a school administrator at Kradle Academy, a Montessori Pre-school in Lagos, Nigeria. Folawe began to think of education inequity as a systemic problem while working as an administrator through an experience where an orphaned child was enrolled at her school. Folawe's experience at this school developed an insatiable interest in education and social development, which spurred her journey to enroll at Modern Montessori International, London for Diploma in Montessori Education. She believes that the only way Nigeria will reach her greatest potential is by educating and investing in her human capital. Folawe is the Chief Executive Officer at Teach for Nigeria. All right, welcome to Under 40 CEOs, Folawe.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, you're very welcome. So in the year 2008, you bagged your bachelor's degree in international law and diplomacy, and that was from the Babcock University. So tell me about those series of events in your childhood that led up to you, studying law.
I think that a lot of people growing up and family, because I talked a lot as a child, and so I think a lot of people just naturally will say the law, and that's what they called me. So it was, uncles and relatives would just say the law. And I was one of those children. I was an extrovert growing up. So I would play with everyone. I would, talk to everyone. I wanted to study law actually, but then going to Babcock University, they didn't have the law option. So I studied international law and diplomacy. But also, I think while I was on the program, and I'm also going to think back into my childhood, I was also that child who will care for the pets in the house. I would care for anyone who was ill. There was just this caring thing and generosity that was just in me. And I was that child that would cry when the parrot died or when the dog wasn't feeling well, and would go with everyone to the vet, to check on the dog. And my father would always say, that I just had this caring spirit in me. And I think I also might have picked it up from my dad, because I remember whenever we had chickens in the house, if the chicken stayed for more than 3 days or for more than a week, my father would say we're not allowed to kill it anymore, that it's become part of us. So, so I think that empathy and just, caring and reaching out, like all of that really must have been from my childhood. And so going into international law and diplomacy and doing that, I feel like the program for me sort of then inspired me to wanting to become an ambassador. Like I just wanted to become a career ambassador in Nigeria. And so the idea to then go and do my master's in diplomatic studies was all from Babcock University after the program. And then, I had these dreams of wanting to go and becoming an ambassador for Nigeria. And I remember, so also growing up, I grew up in Nigeria and in Benin Republic. And so in Benin Republic, I had the opportunity to pick up a second language, which was French. And so when all of this was coming together, I just thought, I will definitely be a great candidate, to serve Nigeria in whatever way. And that's how, studying international law and diplomacy and studying diplomatic studies sort of informed my journey so far.
Amazing. So we'll talk about how you're serving Nigeria at Teach for Nigeria at the moment. But upon returning to Nigeria from the University of Westminster, where you attended the Diplomatic University in London, you took on an appointment as school administrator at Kradle Academy. That's a Montessori primary school in Lagos. Why?
So I remember coming back to Nigeria and the goal, I think I got carried away because all of my colleagues were, talking about going to write an exam, some getting some license and certificate to join their foreign affairs ministry. And so I got a bit excited and I thought the same thing, I'd come to Nigeria and I'd also apply to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which I did. And I remember, arriving in Lagos and some weeks followed, and then I went to Abuja and applied through the Civil Service Commission. And I was just so excited, but I waited 3 months came, 4 months, 6 months, and I never heard anything back from them. And so I remember that a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my peers were all going to work for like the telecoms, they were going to work for banks, they were all going to different corporate organizations. But for me, it was just never a thing. Like I had no interest in going to work in any of those corporations. And I remember just walking to a school. It was actually my brother who sort of like spurred this. And he's like, Folawe, but have you thought about teaching? And, the idea actually sort of like started to settle within me. And so I walked to this school and I just went and told them that I'd like to come and teach. And, the lady looked at me because I met with the director and she said, you have no experience in teaching, you have no background in education, and then how would you then come and say, and I said to her, like, I'm happy to learn and I just want to come, I could be a support teacher. And then I was like into like Fit Fam and I used to work out a lot. And I was like, I could run your aerobics classes and things like that. And so the woman, said to me that I could come and join her school. But this was in May. And so I met this lady who I started chatting with, and she owns Kradle Academy. And I said to her that I'm really excited that I'll be joining the school in September. And she said to me, I never knew that you had interest in working in the school. And I just, I would want you to work in my school instead and not another school. And she's like, in fact, you're resuming next month, come and meet with my partner. And that's how literally I was thrown in the deep end. Like I started working in this school in July. And then, I remember when I met with the director and her partner, she said to me, like, we just want you to come with you. Because I thought I was too young. I thought, how would I deal with parents? I thought, how would I deal with the teachers who were probably older than me? And so there were all of that, I had like all of those fears. But then they said to me, like, we want you to come with your fresh ideas. Like, we're tired of people who will come to our school and say, this is how we did it in that school. And so this is how we're bringing it. Like, we just want all that freshness. And I feel like that was where, like, it all started from, like, my sense of possibility, my sense of, you can do anything you put your mind to doing. Mm-hmm. I think it all came from there. And then also my interest in Montessori, like I never knew in education, grew from that school. I never knew there was anything that could take the place of wanting to be a diplomat in my life. I got into the school and Maria Montessori inspired me. Mm-hmm. And that's really how, I started working in that school as a school administrator. And an experience that struck me is sort of what has led me to where I am now, which all happened from that school as well.
Okay, amazing. So it says that you enrolled at the Modern Montessori International in London. Yes. For the Diploma in Montessori Education. Were your parents ever worried, about taking the turn from international law and diplomacy to education? Like,
people thought I was crazy. It was such an intensive program that, I think my parents knew there was definitely something happening with this girl, but they knew that there was no stopping me. My father is late now, but my mother was really supportive. Like, I remember she was the one who paid for me to, get the diploma. She also supported me to ensure that I went and did my teaching practice in a school in the UK, because I just wanted to sort of like have, such a holistic experience to during the program. But I remember that also personally for me, I felt that it wasn't enough I was in a school as a school administrator in Montessori school. We had teachers who, some of them were Montessori trained, but I thought it was unfair that the school administrator didn't have, like the knowledge or the expertise in what the school was about. And so for me, it was constantly looking for how to better myself, how to improve myself, how to deepen my knowledge, in the approach that we say we're doing. And I saw how just being part of like doing that, parents were a bit more confident in me. They trusted me more because I knew what I was saying. I'd gone and learned, about the program. So people knew there was something going on, but they also knew that I was just truly passionate about, the Montessori and now children and education.
This is Under 40 CEOs.
Please tell me about joining Teach for Nigeria. How did it happen?
The journey to Teach for Nigeria all started from that school in Lekki, where this little girl was adopted. So this little girl was adopted by a parent in Lekki, which is a highbrow area here in Lagos. And her kids had relocated from Nigeria. She adopted this girl from this eastern region in Nigeria. I think it was from Enugu. And the girl's name is Uduamaka. And Uduamaka came to our school. And I remember the day when Uduamaka was enrolled into the school. We had one of our staff meetings, and the teachers, and myself, we just couldn't understand how this child was sort of like brought into the school. She was completely different from every child who was in that school. It was like day and night in comparison. And I remember saying to them, we'll figure it out. But they struggled. And this girl got into the classrooms and she would throw tantrums. She couldn't speak a word of English. She was a tough girl to deal with. But I experienced a transformation that happened with that girl within 2 terms, so about 6 months. And what this transformation, I think what it did to me was because I used to live on the mainland and I was working here in Lekki. And when I'm driving home from work or driving to work from home, and I see those kids on the road who are begging for alms, I picture them in my school. So I would constantly think, so are you saying to me that if this little boy had a chance like Uduamaka, this is exactly how he would also transform? So being in that school, dealing and just attending to about 60 kids just didn't seem enough for me anymore. It just, for me, I was looking for more, to reach more. I was looking for a platform where I could do more. And bear in mind, at this time, I just finished my Diploma in Montessori Education. It made sense for me to sort of like take my career to the next level or go and set up my own school. Like, that was the thinking, but it just wasn't enough. So I remember from that experience, I then applied to this role to work with an organization called Association of Private Educators in Nigeria. And the reason why I joined that association was because of their vision. It was simply because their vision said one day, every Nigerian child will have access to qualitative education. And I joined this association in 2013. And so I joined as the coordinator 2 months after I became the first executive secretary of APEN.
Oh, wow.
And it was a lovely job. I loved the people that I was working with there. And I remember my frustration with the association was, how are we going to reach every Nigerian child if we only focused on the top performing schools and the best schools in Nigeria? So, for example, we worked with schools like Green Springs, like Grange, like St. Saviour's, like Corona. I mean, those were the sort of schools that we ran workshops and development programs for. And the question was always, for us to reach all Nigerian children, we need to extend this beyond those schools. And so I worked there for about 3 years. And one day I heard about Teach for Nigeria. This was at a meeting. And I remember going to say to one of the ladies who is also a co-founder of Teach for Nigeria, saying to her that I don't care in whatever capacity, but I wanted to be part of, whatever it was, the Teach for Nigeria program. I'd gone and done my research, and I'd seen what was happening in India with Teach for India. I'd seen what was happening in America with Teach for America, and in different countries across the world. And I just knew that this was a vision that I wanted to be part of. So fast forward 2015, I remember applying, hearing that they were looking to hire a CEO. I was only 27 at this point, and I applied to join the organization. And I remember someone saying to me that, we're looking to hire a CEO. We don't have other roles yet. And, I don't think that, you're the candidate that we're looking for. But, in the future, we'll have other opportunities and you can then, apply to join the team. And I still tendered my application. I waited about 3 months, and eventually at some point I heard from them, and they had hired a CEO at that point. But they still wanted me to join as a program manager. Bear in mind, there was no program to manage at that point, but it was just, let's have you on board and let's, join. So I remember going to the chair of Association of Private Educators in Nigeria. She's a mentor and just, a role model to me. And I went to her and I told her my decision. about wanting to resign from APEN, and told her like my vision and, you know, just what I was passionate about and why I wanted to join Teach for Nigeria. At that point, we were planning a major conference. So, you know, she was a little heartbroken that I was leaving, but she was also very supportive, you know, that I was making that move to do this. She had, you know, talked about if it was remuneration, etc. Like, you know, if there were things that it could do to keep me, but then it was none of that. I remember accepting the offer to join Teach for Nigeria, and the first month passed. Obviously, I thought so, from what I'd seen, I knew that it was a startup, but I didn't know how early, you know, stage they were. And so I joined the team in June 2015, and July 2015 came, no salary. August followed, no salary. And, you know, it kept going. And 4 months down, the CEO left the organization. And so it was only me then. I was still trying to figure this out. At that point, my conviction for the work and the vision of Teach for Nigeria grew even deeper. I'd had the opportunity to go to see Teach for India and firsthand. And I think that sort of like just strengthened my conviction for the work. We'll go for meetings here in Nigeria, and I would be talking to corporate organizations, and they'll say to me, there's no way you would be able to find young people in Nigeria who will commit 2 years of their lives to teach in some of Nigeria's most underserved schools. And so it was very difficult. Those 2 years that I was, you know, before Teach for Nigeria launched, I didn't receive a salary, but I kept going at it. And that's what I think for me, my conviction stemmed from the little girl from the school where I'd worked, and then also just what I'd seen that was possible in India. And really strengthen my conviction for what could be possible for the children in Nigeria.
This is Under 40 CEOs.
As CEO of Teach for Nigeria today, what is your mandate?
So my mandate is to fundraise for the organization, to design and lead the strategy for the organization, set the tone for the organization. I deal with the organizational development, operational as well. And so pretty much, you know, we're literally only just coming out of our startup phase and early years. We're growing rapidly, but, you know, really I'm just the one leading and setting the strategy for this organization.
All right, so talking about funding, yes. Yours is a non-profit. How do you keep the organization funded?
Fundraising has to be the most challenging part of my job, but I've learned how fundraising also is relationship driven. I think for Nigeria specifically, it's people want to see that, you know, they want to see proof. They want to see that the concept, you know, works. They want to see the impact. And so for the first year, we struggled with because we didn't have that evidence. And so fundraising, a lot of it happened we got a lot of support from international donors, foundations, and then also being part of a network, a larger network, which is the Teach for All global network that has over 47 partners who are doing the same work in their different countries. Being part of that network also sort of gave us some support to be able to tap into seed grants that were made available to entrepreneurs in different parts of the world who were trying to start this work. And so that was one. I think another one was just also having such amazing group of co-founders and board members who were truly passionate and committed to the organization. They also gave their own personal resources towards, you know, launching Teach for Nigeria and starting the work. They also tapped into their network of friends and colleagues. And so that was how we were able to initially sort of like get the funding that we used to start Teach for Nigeria. This year, for example, we got our first local corporate funding from an organization here in Nigeria. And then also we've got some banks now who are on board. And so now we're building a much more diverse funding base. And we're hoping that we will continue to increase that and grow our funding base locally and globally.
You mentioned your board of directors, and I see it's such a robust board. But tell me, what's the organizational structure at Teach for Nigeria?
So we have our board of trustees, and then we have the CEO, myself. We're currently scaling to the northern region. So we have our regional directors, and then we have our managers. So our program, we have different program areas. And so we have heads of the different program areas. So like the head of recruitment, the head of training, the head of alumni development, and then we have the accountant. So it's board of trustees, the CEO, and then the managers, and then we have we have coaches who are supported by the managers. For example, in training, we have coaches. In recruitment, as head of recruitment, we have the recruiters and the selectors. And so it's pretty much set up according to like the different program areas that we have. And then we don't have a COO yet. It's still a lean structure, but then the vision for what we'll have a CFO, we'll have a COO, and we have more people that we'll bring on board as we grow.
This is Under 40 CEOs.